Hello! Welcome to the world of video games. My name is Professor Ruby Seals. However, everyone just calls me Codex Entry. But enough about me. Why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself? Are you a boy, or are you a girl? Wait, what does this choice even do? Also curious as to why boys are almost always listed first in these things, and why those are the only two options available as well, NB Gang Rise Up, but one question at a time. What is the actual consequence of this choice? What does this choice change? Those of you who have played Pokemon might already know that the effect of choosing your gender is basically just selecting your character model and pronouns. But here's a question. Is that all it should change? I mean, doesn't being a man or being a woman radically change how the world interacts with you in real life? That's like the one thing both feminists and incels agree on. So why not here? Easy answer, because this is goddamn Pokemon, a game built from the ground up to be playable by children who are not yet old enough to even read. That is not shade. Glad we have games like these, both as a former child who could not read, and someone who had a grimy competitive stealth rock team back during Soul Silver. I was part of the problem. Either way, I think it's actually kind of a good thing that Pokemon limits the impact of your chosen gender to something so superficial. But then why is Mass Effect basically the same? Why is Skyrim basically the same? Why do Bloodborne, Outer Worlds, Dragon Age, Final Fantasy XIV, fuck-mothering Cyberpunk all largely turn gender into nothing more than a cosmetic skin? These are all mature games, so says the ESRB. So why do they all approach the difference between how the world treats men and women with all of the complexity of the Gardevoir dating sim? I'm overstating this a bit. There are minor impacts in some of them, of course. Lead voice actors swapped, romances and clothing options locked off, minute stat differences, one or two small moments of misogyny towards women that you can then violently respond to, maybe even an inversion of misogyny where a woman is sexist towards men for the sake of subversion. Ooh, so postmodern. Ultimately, however, the differences are typically restricted to gating off relatively meager portions of content. There are, naturally, exceptions within the exceptions as well, especially when we start looking at games like Mountain Blade. More mechanically driven experiences where the story emerges from the gameplay more than the actual pre-scripted story. Games like those are narratives principally about how you are treated by systems. So it's not too rare to find games willing to integrate gender into their simulation of those systems. However, as far as tightly scripted, narrative-driven games designed to give us player characters to project ourselves onto, your Final Fantasies, your Fables, your KOTORs, it's sincerely difficult to find even a single game which has substantial differences woven into how the broader game world and narrative treats the player character in response to their choice of gender, even within the role-playing genre. The reality is that in most games with a gender select screen, you aren't playing a woman, nor are you even really playing a man. You are playing a video game, with a preset script that often does its best to be non-gendered, bereft of gender. The issue with that, however, is that in practice, it means most of these scripts are written from the assumption that the player will maybe not be a man, but will definitely be not a woman. Often the best we can hope for is our player character to be treated as an agender cursor. And at worst, we can see a character who is ostensibly a woman, but within the subtext is just straight up a man trapped inside of a feminine body and probably in desperate need of T-gel. I love Mass Effect dearly. I love FemShep dearly. Very important work to me if you couldn't tell by the name of my channel. Really should make a video about it someday. That said, it must needs be remarked that there are exceedingly few points over the course of 3 epic-length games where FemShep actually acts, femme. When we say FemShep, it is an almost purely anatomical, aesthetic, and perhaps romantic descriptor, because those are the only differences between her and MaskShep, aka the default that was featured on the cover. I know a lot of people would be quick to make the case that, oh, FemShep is simply a tomboy. Just let girls be boyish without all of this gender nonsense. Which, A tomboy is a type of girl which, yes, has a lot of masculinity in the mix, but is still decidedly a girl and gets treated as one socially, because otherwise she would just be a boy, sans Tom. Or perhaps a boy named Tom. More importantly though, B, not the point I'm trying to make here. The point is that regardless of how feminine you feel FemShep may or may not be, it's pretty clear from even a casual glance that the Mass Effect games, like many other games with selectable genders before and since, were written with a male player character as the starting point, and only then will the script have womanhood grafted and embellished onto it after the fact as a very limited optional side path. FemShep is not the main character. She is a feminine palette swap for an otherwise masculine character. An optional understudy standing in a place originally crafted for a male player character. You know, like a reversible cover.
We're not really girly girls, are we?
Since I know clarifications are essential here, no, this isn't an inherently bad thing, 'cause, you know, men aren't inherently bad. Is that enough to get you to put the gun down? Again, this lack of gender experience makes sense for a lot of games. I'm not playing Stardew Valley to experience the gender pay gap, nor the male loneliness epidemic by way of Animal Crossing. Not every game should or needs to comment on how gender impacts the way the world treats us. But some games should, right? At least more than one? Yeah? Especially when we're looking at games which clearly strive to artistic heights. To tell stories that would have us consider themes of life and death, examining what it is that makes us people, which would have us think about ourselves and the world that surrounds us. Aren't we missing something by not having games reflect the myriad differences in how the world typically treats men versus how it typically treats women? Not just a misogyny bludgeon, nor a girl boss simulator, but a sincere depiction of both the masculine and feminine perspectives as the distinct lived experiences we all know they are. Something that shows the unique struggles and benefits of both point of views. And yet, I can't deny that the fact that we don't see more of this is unfortunately reasonable given the realistic limitations of game development. I mean, to truly capture all the nuances which divide the lived experiences of masculine and feminine people would effectively require you to write an entire script from one gendered perspective and then completely rewrite it from the ground up, adding multiple unique scenes, interactions, and whole character relationships in order to truly capture all that comes with living as the other gender. But that would be a comically absurd amount of effort, wouldn't it? Persona 3 Portable is a 2009 RPG developed by Atlus, released for the PlayStation Portable, and is the best Persona game by a wide margin, Fight Me. In it, you play as the leader of the Specialized Extracurricular Execution Squad, a group of high schoolers with the ability to summon demons from their inner soul. By, well, you know. It's a metaphor for unflinchingly confronting and acknowledging death, it's fine. This ability is put to extensive use as they fight to discover the secret of the giant tower known as Tartarus, while the teens juggle saving the world with managing their day-to-day school life, along with all the romance, studying, and club activities that entails. Much of this is largely mediated by the now legendary dating sim-inspired social link mechanic. which brings with it various social stats, over a dozen characters to emotionally connect to in their own standalone stories, and a tarot card theming which has more or less defined the series' aesthetic ever since. Persona 3 Portable is not without its flaws. The presentation is decidedly wanting, particularly in comparison to its PS2 and 5 counterparts. The combat can get repetitive, especially in conjunction with its mediocre UI, which requires every turn takes longer than it needs to. And some elements of the writing are timeless, while others have aged poorly, and others still were just never a good idea to start with. Ken, oh my god, dude. However, whatever flaws it might have in specific spots are pretty thoroughly made up for with a thematically razor-sharp script, diverse cast of compelling characters, staggering amount of style for a PSP game, simply choosing not to date the 12-year-old, and just watching the anime cutscenes on YouTube. Taken as a whole, it was really impressive for a mobile game back in 2009. There is no shortage of things to love about P3P. In modern discussions, however, Portable is only ever really brought up as a means of discussing its most unique and expansive feature, namely, Kotone Shiomi, aka Persona 3 Portable's playable female protagonist, aka Femc's route, aka the only time modern Persona has ever let you play as a girl. But goddamn, the one time they did, they really fucking did. Kotone is the result of a weird time and place for gaming. Mobile hardware wasn't strong enough to do a huge amount of fancy graphics or voice lines, but the PSP's chosen media format of UMD storage meant that there was effectively unlimited space for PNGs and text. Suddenly, in this unique circumstance, we have a very specific moment in time where it was actually financially wise to greenlight a full rewrite of an entire game script to use as a selling point for a re-release. This rewrite would be directed by Azusa Kido, who was the lead social link planner for Persona 3's original release, and is, notably, a woman. Usually not worth highlighting, but it makes a lot of sense to bring up in this context. This game does a staggeringly good job capturing what it's like to be a depressed teen girl living through the mid-aughts, because being a girl informs every single second of your experience with Kotone's social elements. The new social links exclusive to her route exemplify this, with the Chariot social link in particular being a perfect case study of the kind of subtle gender divide I'm talking about. In the male MC's route, the Chariot social link has you joining one of the school's sports teams, and subsequently befriending your hyper-competitive teammate, Kazushi Miyamoto, as you help him overcome his inferiority complex, while shepherding him off the road of self-destruction and onto a path where he can healthily pursue his dreams. Eventually, Kazushi accepts that his health matters both to himself and those around him, and that there's no I in team. It's a good, solid coming-of-age story, one that reminded me of many boys I personally knew in high school when I was still a teenager several thousand years ago. In Kotone's route, though, Kazushi exists only as a background character to the new main character of the Chariot link, Ryo Iwasaki. Ryo's story is thematically analogous to Kazushi's, having you join one of the girls' sports teams while touching on the same need to have patience with and care for yourself, both for your sake and the sake of the people you've committed yourself to. Yet, it approaches those themes from a very different perspective. After developing a crush on a boy, Ryo begins to push herself and everyone on the team she manages to their limits in a desperate bid to seem mature and impress him. Whereas Kazushi's story is that of a boy pushing himself beyond his physical limits for the sake of excelling as an individual, Ryo's is about emotionally burning yourself out in a desperate drive to support others that ultimately serves to burn them out and drive them away. All of which is done in the name of impressing a boy. I don't want to make this sound like I'm insisting that all boys are this way and all girls are that way, because I know enough boy girls and girl boys to know that that's not how any of this works. These aren't strictly gendered experiences, and yet there's still something undeniably gendered about them. In Kazushi's route, you act as this dude's bro, You call him out on his bullshit by throwing roasts at him, ribbing him for when he's clearly lying to himself, telling him sternly to suck it up and get his shit together. All things that have a decisive vibe of boys being boys about them. On the flip side, you help Rio work through her insecurity by being emotionally supportive, by giving her space to feel her feelings, and being there for her alongside your shared friend, Yuko. Another Male C social link that was replaced because she manages the boys team. It's a girl squad looking out for other girls as one of them crashes out over a boy. There's a feminine camaraderie to it which simply is not allowed to exist in the original script, because any character you might have it with is left as a romance option first, person second. With Kotone as the lead, however, your interactions with the girls are a lot more platonic, which in turn means that they're given a lot more freedom to be messy and weird in a way that they're just simply not allowed to be when you're expected to be romantically invested in them. Yukari is a perfect microcosm of this. But first, a paid sponsor actually worth your time. Hey, do you need voice training for gender reasons? What about acting reasons? Singing or music lessons, mayhap? Would you simply like to achieve your lifelong goal of nailing your impression of Harry Dubois' limbic system?
Yes, your one disco mother.
Then may I recommend Ash Savonum, an incredibly talented voice artist and my personal voice coach. She reached out to me about the sponsorship a while ago, so I did what any reasonable person would do and spent the last several months taking voice training and acting lessons from her. So I can tell you from first-hand experience that Ash is a phenomenal teacher. Deeply knowledgeable, fantastic at explaining concepts and guiding you through using them, and always seems to know what tools you need. And of course, endlessly patient and never judgmental. Trust me, if I hadn't personally benefited from her talents, you wouldn't be hearing this ad right now. So if you act now, you can get 25% off your first voice lesson using promo code just how our Ruby sent you. She's a real person. I'm a real person. We don't need secret passwords around here. Just how I said hi. Realize this is a bit of an atypical sponsorship, but I'd rather be uplifting cool independent talent than trying to be the umpteenth person struggling in vain to get you to give money to raid Hello Tanks VPN or whatever. Instead, give that money to something that actually helps you improve at the vocal skills you want to learn. Give it to Ash Savonum, and master your own voice before you know it. Tell her Codex Entry sent you for a discount. Link to make an appointment in the description. Now, back to Yukari. In Male C's route, you cannot even start a social link with Yukari until you've nearly maxed out your charm stat, because you are a boy who's asking a really pretty girl to hang out with you alone. That can't help but carry implications. Implications which the game eagerly leans into because it wants you to be romantically invested in Yukari because, again, this is pulling a great deal from dating sims. And it's good. It's a solid teen romance story. I'm not saying this is unethical. I mean, it's nothing to write home about, but it was enough that I did argue in her defense as best girl back when I was a teen, before I'd seen Aegis's link. This is because quality of girl I'd prefer to hook up with is the lens P3 more or less tells you to view all the girls in this game through. Which of these baddies do you want to date? With one curious exception though, none of the girls in Kotone's route are forced through this filter, and benefit from it. Yukari, perhaps more than any other. I say this with complete affection. Yukari's messy as hell in this route. She is angry and distrustful and quick to assume the worst. She still has no shortage of positive qualities too, of course, but nonetheless is still, flatly, more unlikable here than she was in the other route. But for good reason. It can be easy to forget in Male C's route, but even by the standards of Persona 3's deeply traumatized cast, Yukari's been through absolute hell. A father who died brutally before having multiple deaths pinned on him, which resulted in her family being harassed for years. A neglectful mother who basically abandoned her to pursue shallow relationships with men. And a complete dearth of friends or family because she's been forced to move constantly as a result of all of it. Yukari would qualify as an Eva pilot. Seen from that angle, it'd be really weird if she wasn't more prone to lashing out and pushing others away, which she most certainly is here. You save her from almost getting hit by a car, and she screams at you because what if you had died? Did you even think before you act? Anta baka! And yet, despite all of this, she still hangs out with you right away and continues to do so even as she shows you the worst of herself because you are a girl with very similar emotional experiences to hers, and you bond with her over that. Funnily enough, despite this being a platonic relationship, Yukari actually connects a lot more deeply with Kotone than her male counterpart. As a character, she feels no need to hide the uglier parts of herself in a way that a girl trying to impress a boy would. And the writers aren't obligated to soften her edges to make sure she remains romantically desirable to the player. As a result, you see a much more complete, nuanced picture of her specifically because she interacts with you as a girl. This is a late addition to the script, but I think it's incredibly important that we see what I'm talking about with some extreme nuance. So, without comment or critique, let's look specifically at rank 6 of Yukari's social link, for both protagonists. In both rank 5 scenes, the main character saves Yukari from having her wallet stolen by some punks. In each instance, the scene concludes with Yukari getting incredibly mad at the player because she hates feeling reliant on other people. After cooling off, she returns in rank 6 to apologize. As we'll see though, that apology plays out very differently depending on the player's gender.
Hey, do you remember when those guys stole my wallet and you came to help me? Sorry I got so mad at you. I don't like having to depend on other people. I wanted to be able to take care of it myself. But I ended up needing your help. I never told you this, but I'm really glad you came. Thanks for your help back then. I really appreciate it.
And now, Kotone's version.
Hey, do you remember when those guys stole my wallet and you came to help me? And still, I just blurted out stuff that made no sense. I was just so angry at myself. Did it make you mad?
No.
Really? I'm glad to hear that. I always just blurt out whatever I'm thinking to you. I wonder why.
Isn't it because we're friends?
Oh. I see. Oh. I get it now. That's how friends are. I think there's a part of me that's really unsentimental. I always keep thinking of myself as apart from others. To tell the truth, I didn't care about other people. But at the same time, I didn't want anybody to get involved with me either. But it's kind of different with you. I don't mind how much you try to be my friend. Actually, I look forward to it. I think, deep down, I wanted someone to understand what I was going through. Maybe I wanted someone to be sympathetic and say, "Oh, poor thing, you're doing your best." Maybe I want someone to try to take special care of me for once. Not that I'd let just anyone do it. I'd only want someone I like to do that for me.
You tell me, which one of these scenes feels more emotionally intimate? Because one of these scenes is meant to be romantic. Also, did you notice how the discussion with Kotone is over twice the length of the romantic interaction? Yukari literally, numerically, opens up to you more in this route, and the only reason she can trust you enough to do so is because you are a girl she relates to. That is, after all, why she is talking to Kotone in the first place. This is a good example of what I mean when I talk about the differences between the lived experiences of men and women. I know it's easy to hear that combination of words and immediately jump to the most heinous possible extremes. Those extremes shouldn't be outright ignored, of course, and there are in fact more than a couple moments and stories here which allude to the unique ways women need to look out for their own safety, but they are the exception, not the rule. This is not a story defined by feminine pain. More often, you get hit with little moments of feminine interaction. Rio compliments your outfit, Mitsuru vents about the way her family is pressuring her into marriage, Sayori invites you to partake in silly astrology-type games, Tanaka grossly tells you to play up your sex appeal to get ahead in business, Junpei jumping at the chance to defend you from other boys, Fuka getting jealous of your ability to cook, and so on. Stereotypical in places, perhaps, but still real and relatable. This divide is all over the place from beginning to end. It's also worth noting that this cuts both ways. By having this feminine point of view to contrast it with, suddenly the male MC's route feels much more, well, boyish. It captures a distinctly masculine experience that would be largely unremarkable on its own, as is the case in the sequels. With Kotone's route existing just next door as a counterpoint though, suddenly you hanging out with Kenji doesn't feel like just a weak social link to kick off the broader game, but you doing your best to be a bro to your new friend who's clearly out of his depth by trying to seduce a teacher, but is still your boy, bro! The male MC's route is granted more depth and nuance merely by having Kotone's route there to contrast the different lived experiences that this one little choice leads to. Particularly considering that Kenji's link is gone completely in Kotone's route, because why would he want to talk to you? He's only interested in older women. That's the founding premise of his arc. His presence is still decidedly felt though, because Kenji's the guy that Rio is crushing on, and the woman Kenji's crushing on is the coach of the girls' sports team you're on. Are you beginning to see what I mean when I say that choosing your gender in Persona 3 Portable changes the way the world interacts with you, and the way you need to interact with it in turn? One more example for the unconvinced. Let's look at the Hermit social links. In Male C's route, the Hermit link is centered around Maya, a player in an MMO who you end up forming a bond with before she develops a crush on you, which lasts until the exact moment she finds out you're a student in her class. And which didn't at all begin a long, horrifying trend of romantic tensions with teachers twice your age, which would eventually culminate in whatever the fuck was going on with Kawakami in Persona 5. At least here she ultimately rejects you when you try and make a move on her because no shit, objectively correct answer. Pushing that aside though, the intent is clear. The story of two people making an emotional connection in an online video game, which leaves the lives of both better than when they started. A tale as old as muds. However, girls don't play video games. Clearly. As we all know. So Junpei never gives you a copy of the MMO, and thus this link is instead centered around Sayori Hasegawa, the head of the Student Health/Library Committee, depending on your choices. Sayori is a complex character by the standards of social links. A student who has been living overseas before returning home to study, resulting in her being 2 years older than her classmates. This has led her to struggle with communicating with her peers, which has thereby caused her to become passive and withdrawn, and in turn has led her to getting severely bullied. Particularly after another girl begins to spread heinous rumors about her stealing people's boyfriends, after her boyfriend asks Sayori out while neglecting to mention that he already had a girlfriend. She of course doesn't hold her boyfriend accountable, but only Sayori for, giant air quotes here, seducing him. All of this is, of course, enabled by a sexist teacher who takes it all as gospel, because misogyny. This leads to a lot of harassment, manipulation, and impersonation, because naturally everyone also blames her and not the actual cheater, thereby causing her to become even more reserved, to such an extent that she avoids talking to you in public because she doesn't want you to get caught up in the rumors around her. If you've heard Fiona Apple's newspaper, you know this song and dance. This only gets worse when a local tabloid uses a picture of Sayori in a scandalous article talking about how teen girls from the school are all sluts. Sayori is dealing with bullying, but it's a very specific type of bullying that's almost exclusively for girls. Putting aside that it's founded on a lie, this is slut-shaming. Scarlet letter shit without even having kissed a boy. And Kotone gets pissed about this. She is absolutely livid on Sayori's behalf in a way that just screams feminine solidarity. Yet she would not, could not be confiding this in you if you were a boy. After all, letting herself be vulnerable with a boy is what caused most of her problems in the first place. But she can trust you, and you can be furious on her behalf because, as a girl, you recognize that this is clearly misogyny. It's also worth noting that the fastest way to build up her trust is just to consistently have her back. Reject the lies you hear about her and refuse to distance yourself by staying loyal to Sayori, even when it gets hard. This eventually culminates in you physically standing up for her before literally all the female teachers we meet in-game come to her defense because they know better than most the kind of damage rumors can do. All as Sayori disproves the lies about herself. This doesn't fix her problem, but it does drastically improve it. All of which is to say that Sayori's link is about befriending a girl dealing with misogynist bullying as a girl who is in constant danger of getting tagged with the exact same sexist rumors. It's a tale of girls protecting girls. The fact that both of you are women is at the heart of everything here. Not going to say that boys never have to deal with something like this, but dealing with this specific problem in these specific circumstances in this specific way, that feels distinctly like a teen girl problem. This whole link is so goddamn upsetting, and it's the best non-party member social link in the entire franchise. Not even close. I could keep doing this for a while with all of the different social links. I haven't even mentioned the 3 actually good romances with Akihiko, Shinjiro, and Ryoji, the subtle shifts in how you talk to people like Maiko and Akanari, the friendship you have with Fuka completely changing in its underlying substance, to an uncountable number of little moments within the main script. I cannot stress enough how much this permeates every writing decision made here. Unfortunately though, I am trying to make a relatively short video for once, so we'll leave the social links there for now, and instead turn back to the girl at the heart of all of this herself. Kotone. Because as we've seen, she is her own distinct character with her own personality. And her own copes. Malesy has been described as emo from the moment Vanilla P3 was released, and for once, the accusation isn't unwarranted. He is one of those boys who does their best to hide their emotions by falling into an extreme introversion, coping with loss by trying to reduce what he has left down to the absolute minimum as he closes himself off emotionally. He just sucks it up, pushes through the pain, and remains aloof from everything happening around him. It's an unhealthy, yet tragically common cope, especially amongst men and boys who've experienced extreme trauma. And his trauma is most certainly that. Even before we meet him, this kid has seen his parents die among dozens of others, nearly died himself, has seemingly no friends or connections prior to the start of the game, turns to music as a form of escapism constantly, doesn't hesitate to fucking shoot himself, and carries the concept of death itself in his very soul. He has been through hell and back so literally that his persona is Orpheus. I know writers who use subtext and they're all cowards. And all of this is true of Kotone as well. Unlike Malesy, however, you wouldn't know it by looking at her. At a glance, she is the exact opposite of her counterpart. She's smiley, upbeat, silly, pink, 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 so much pink. And yet, once you push past that and begin to look at the subtext of it all, it starts to become clear that Kotone is every bit as traumatized, death-obsessed, and melancholic as Malesy. It merely manifests in a different way. So I probably don't need to tell you that there is a certain set of social expectations on girls to be cheery, accommodating, and warm. And Kotone most certainly lives up to this by managing her suffering in a way that doesn't inconvenience others. In almost the exact same way Yukari fails to. But make no mistake, this is a mask. A persona, if you will. Kotone carries the exact same amount of pain as her male counterpart, which it turns out is a Thanatos amount of grief and pain. She is never not hurting in the same way he is. Rather than becoming introverted and mopey as he's allowed to, though, she instead leans into a forced bubbly happiness and willingness to aggression to cope, otherwise known as the Pinkie Pie strat. In modern day, she would absolutely be a brat girly. This is seen clearly in Ryoji's route, and Arrival of the Big Bad, where, for reasons I will not be spoiling, Kotone opens up about her true feelings more than she does anywhere else. While this link technically carries a lot of romantic tension in it, with Ryoji flirting with every girl he meets and Kotone having the freedom to playfully flirt back, it eventually becomes apparent that neither of them really get what romance is. By the time Ryoji is asking you what lovers even talk about, and Kotone unable to give a real answer, it becomes hard to see their mutual playfulness as anything but a hollow escape. A way to get a quick hit of validating dopamine that you exist and matter. Ryoji is like this because, well, if you know, you know. Kotone is like this because her anhedonic grief is the same as Malesi's, but is usually filtered through this feminine lens, which means she usually ends up covering it with playful flirting and a cheerleader's pep. After the dust settles though, it's hard not to get the sense that she lives up to the roles expected of her while pushing her own feelings to the side for basically the entire game. The only time this rule is broken is within the game's final social link. A story that plays out basically the same regardless of what route you're on. Which means it's time to call back to that one interesting exception I mentioned when it came to the changes in how the girls are treated. I am, of course, referring to the living weapon and aspiring human, Aegis. As a robot who's had minimal human interaction prior to the start of the game, Aegis has a bit of a weird relationship with both humanity and gender. It's pretty undeniable that when you meet her, she is a thing. A machine in the shape of a human, but lacking in humanity. This might sound harsh, but the crux of the joke they use to introduce her is that she doesn't understand the boys are flirting with her because she is unable to grasp the concept of being a girl, let alone a monogamous heterosexual relationship, let alone have the social skills to recognize she is being flirted with because she doesn't know what being human even means in the first place. Her entire arc is centered around learning what death is and figuring out how anyone can continue to do anything while knowing of death's inevitability because she is initially so far removed from humanity that she can't understand how you could continue on in the face of that. She literally uses she/it pronouns when you meet her. Look at this line. Look at this fucking line. I couldn't make this shit up. Someone's going to complain that I'm being too woke right now, despite the fact that this fucking exists. As the story goes on, though, she slowly begins to do the most human thing possible and form connections. Most of all, with you. These connections are what make her a true person. What's more, they are what make her into a girl. She goes from walking tank to being one of the girls in the hot spring because she is one of them, lack of anatomy be damned. Despite all of this though, her social link remains largely the same in both routes because it's still there primarily to reinforce the game's central theme of accepting death. And if there's one thing that isn't changed by our gender, it's why life is worth living and why humanity is worth loving. We don't have much time, and each other is all we've got. Death is many things, inevitable, apathetic, and equal. So we should love each other and live as ourselves as fully as we can, while we can. And Aegis does exactly that, regardless of gender. In both routes, she obsesses over you, wants the best for you, will do anything to protect you, and literally invites you to touch her in the most intimate way she can possibly find because she loves you so much. In Malesi's route, this is ultimately just another romance, yet another candidate in the best girl competition. In Kotone's route, this becomes the only canonically queer romance in the entirety of modern Persona. This was years ahead of the curve on Girl Thing Yuri. Even in leaving something unchanged, the change in the player's gender means that the lens which you view it through must also change all the same. Because our genders affect every little nuance of life. Few things color everything we do more consistently. It is a divide worth exploring in its totality, with the maturity, nuance, and humanity it deserves. And perhaps no other game out there does it with more depth than the two routes of Persona 3 Portable. I'm also upset about it, because we're probably not going to see anything like it ever again. And we should have more. P3P is the best we've got. How fucking grim. One last question to wrap things up. Why do I keep calling Makoto male-C? I don't know. Why do you keep calling Kotone fem-C? I recognize that he's the default, as it were. Again, reversible covers and all that. But why? For nearly 2 decades, Persona 3 Portable was the definitive version of Persona 3, unless you were willing to play with AI teammates. It's still the definitive edition if you want social links with all of your party members. There was 3 years where Persona 3 existed without Kotone in it. 3 years, and it has now been over 15 since. Yet that relatively small window of time is enough to ensure that we will never, ever see her again. Why did Reload only offer the male-C's route? Because of that whole resources thing I mentioned before, right? Okay, cool. Follow-up question then. Why didn't they remake Kotone's route instead of Makoto's? Like, I love this dude dearly, but bro is on his 3rd remake now. We are 2 full sequels into playing games like these as a guy like this, and the smart money says Persona 6 won't be any different. So then, what makes the idea of Reload being a remake of specifically Kotone's route, even at the exclusion of Makoto's, a screamingly laughable idea? Oh, but that would radically change the foundation of Persona 3 as it was originally released. Welcome to Shin Megami Tensei, we do that shit for fucking lunch here. Except when it comes to letting you choose your gender. Why is Makoto's route sacrosanct, while Kotone's is viewed as a depreciated feature? Let's state it plainly. The reason we didn't get a fem-C remake is because it's assumed that male audiences are much less likely to play as a woman, particularly within their dating sims. And male audiences are given priority because they are viewed as the main audience, while women are viewed as a niche fringe, a bonus to the real audience. Are they actually? Maybe. Maybe not. Hard to truly know when the only Persona game which allows women to play as a woman is a 15-year-old visual novel made for hardware weaker than the phone you're probably watching this video on. Despite that lack of offering though, I can anecdotally say that it has never been difficult to find women who are Persona fans. Yet they are expected to just suck it up and play these games through the eyes of a male protagonist, while the idea of asking the male audience to do the same for a female protag is treated as absurd. They won't even give us the experiences they already have. We aren't going to get a new female protag in Persona, because Atlus doesn't think it's worth it, because they assume male audiences would reject them. This is what Atlus clearly thinks about their male players. And Atlus might be right about that. I don't think they are. I do in fact think that men are better than that, and women would pick up the slack for anyone scared off by the ideas of getting cooties. But Atlus might be right about it, and that's enough to bury her. Which is to say that Kotone has been left to gather dust because of misogyny. Kotone has hit the glass ceiling and is no longer allowed to rise any further, because she's not seen as a real character in the way that the rest of the cast is. Her and her femininity are seen as a special feature for the back of the box, as a bonus, as a gesture towards diversity, and nothing more. But I guess that's among the most realistic feminine experiences one can have, huh? We only kept you around because we needed a girl, but we no longer need a girl. So leave. Persona nails it again. Yes, this was a Reload hate video in disguise the entire time, and is why I'm not buying it till it's on a $10 Steam sale. Also, P3P is the game that cracked my egg. Okay, bye. The first 6 hours of the Horrorspec route of Pathologic for those who will never play it is live now, over on Patreon. We're already all the way up to day 10, and the full summary will almost certainly be posted by the end of the month. It's shaping up to be far and away the best thing I've ever made, and should be out by the end of the year if God loves me. But if you can't wait, or just want to support the channel, you can see it now, for as little as $3. Along with a bunch of other writing I've been doing on the side. Promise it's worth it. Thanks again to Ash the Vonum for sponsoring this video. Definitely be sure to check her out for all of your voice coaching needs, and don't forget to tell her I sent ya. Additionally, shout out to DM Lee Pyro for voicing Yukari. Fucking nailed it, you're the best. Additionally, a very special thanks to the Katone Cutscenes project for doing God's work, as well as making sure this video didn't look like a slideshow. If you haven't played Katone's route before, and this video has inspired you to do so, do yourself a favor and be sure to install the mod, or at least watch the cutscenes on YouTube. More things change. And of course, a huge thank you to all of our incredible patrons who made all of this possible. Incredible people such as Black Mage App, Solmetal, Cami Dawn, Alex Shemp, Archaeopteryc Gidi, Reba, Derry, Oops Olsini, Bunny Hats Incorporated, Whack-A-Moles, Rocket Owl, Adrian Nerium, Matthew Cassidy, Gunbunster, Brody Bones, Leon DeBoa, Michael Lawson, Crushable Door, Liliana, Shibby, Some Moose, Moth, Dartilius Rayard, Lilith Luna Lovecraft, Phoenix, Sad Fox, Chloe Salzenberg, Svit Heat, Eric Panonian, Anna Nicholas, Jordan Pilch, Elle Sawbridge, Teenager Gator, Alex Pearl, Lease950, Prophecy Fulfilled, and Sweater Monster, as well as everyone else currently supporting me on Patreon. Thank you all so much. Also, if this sold you on Katone as a character, be sure to check out Persona 3 Portable's comic anthology, Dear Girls, specifically the chapter Smile. The rest of the manga is pretty cute too, at least the chapters that aren't about grooming Ken. But Smile really confirms everything I insist about Katone here, and the only reason I didn't cite it is because I didn't want to get into slap fights about canon. Either way though, still a great short read. Hope you enjoy. Thank you for watching, and I'll soon be back with the new best video you've ever seen. Keep an eye out. Love you all. Peace.
Maybe I just want someone to try and take... What the heck is this? This is gay as hell. Damn, this shit gay as hell.